What's going on, my damn people? I want to welcome everybody for today's damn live podcast. Today, I'm super excited to have our guest on today. But before I intro him, I want to thank everybody for listening. We do this D.A.M podcast for you, the listeners out there, and D.A.M stands for David Advisor Movement. We want to empower the scrappy underdogs in all of you and empower the human spirit that you all have. We know that there is advisors out there listening who are trying to grow. They're trying to get further in their career. They're trying to serve their clients at the highest level, and they feel like they're in a battle of David versus Goliath. So we want to bring you actionable speakers, resources, and tools so that you can up-level your practice and you can become the person you dreamed about when you got into this business. So I want to thank everybody for listening today. I'm going to introduce our guest, Mr. Mondo Salavanti III. Some people would call him Trip when you're the third of a lineage. Let me give you a few of his stats. 15,000 followers on LinkedIn. My guy has had over 1 million engagements on his posts over the last 90 days, 4 million year to date plus. Youngest ever blue chip advisor qualifier in his company's history. Rookie of the year in 2021. Former college linebacker. Love that because I got a kid who plays outside linebacker. He's got a wedding upcoming, and I'm going to tell you what, he delivers on the one thing that most people struggle with in this business, which is he has omnipresence. He's everywhere all the time. And it's super important that we have him here today. He's going to share with us how you can leverage LinkedIn to triple your client acquisition and grow a personal brand as a financial advisor. Mondo Salavanti, welcome, brother.
Eric, I appreciate you having me, and I hope to live up to that intro that you gave me.
But as we say in Texas, it's not bragging if it's the truth. So I want to jump right in, and can you share with everybody a little bit of your background about how you got into the end? To triple your client acquisition and grow a personal brand as a financial advisor. Mondo Salavanti, welcome, brother.
Eric, I appreciate you having me, and I hope to live up to that intro that you gave me.
But as we say in Texas, it's not bragging if it's the truth. So I want to jump right in, and can you share with everybody a little bit of your background about how you got into the industry and maybe some of the alternatives that you tried before LinkedIn to try to grow your practice?
How I got into the industry came at a pivotal moment when I was in college, where I totally went off one path and decided to come into this path of becoming a financial advisor through guidance that a mentor had given me, really. And at the time, not even necessarily was my mentor, but became my mentor after that. So take a couple steps back. My father's a family doctor, and my whole life I thought I was going to be a family doctor. And as I get to college, I'm playing football, as you mentioned, taking a lot of my time. Football is great, of course, but I wasn't playing a lot of school, if you want to put it that way. So I fail a couple classes, and I was never that student. I was always a A student, great grades, did awesome in school. So it was totally out of character. And it led to a lot of looking inside and reflecting on my life of where I wanted it to go. And that's when I realized I didn't want to be a doctor like my father. I really just was pushed that way my whole life, not even necessarily by him, but just the people around me. Because, growing up, it's like, oh, you're going to be a doctor like your father. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to follow in his footsteps. And it made sense in a way, because all I had to do was pass school and then walk out and take over this big business that he built. So I decided not to go that route, though. And it was through a conversation with his financial advisor, Timmy, who's now one of my partners, that led to looking at financial advising as a career. And that was my freshman year of college that I sort of made that choice. But then throughout college, football got better. I was thinking about playing pro football overseas in Europe. That was ended because I had a shoulder injury, and pretty much weighed the risk reward, thinking, well, I could go pursue this and have another year of football, but then what happens when I get hurt? Now I gave up a whole year of earning an income, and I probably spent a lot of money to do that on top of it. On the other hand, you could see a little sneaker over there, trying to use backwards camera here. The little sneaker over there, I was reselling sneakers in college my last semester, right before I became a financial advisor. And this was simply out of boredom a little bit. I mean, I always had a passion for sneakers. I collected them my whole life. And my best friend Jarrett was selling sneakers, and he sort of put me on to how much money could be made doing it as a side hustle. It really was a side hustle, but it was becoming big quick. And my last month, I sold about 100 pairs in 1 month, which, for perspective, that's nearly like $10,000 in revenue, roughly. No, not 10 grand, probably like 6 grand. But anyways, in 1 month, and I was starting to make some good money. And then I just decided, okay, I'm done, wipe it clean. I'm actually going to go into this financial advising thing. So it was this straight path. I made a pivot, and then I sort of went in a circle and came back to that pivot to now be doing this full time for almost 4 years.
So any similarities from selling sneakers and financial advising, or any parallels?
There's a ton, actually, which is funny. And I never thought of this at the time, but I look at that, and I never went to business school, but I feel that gave me what an MBA did. So when I was selling sneakers, a lot of how I grew that business was social media. So it's funny because now I'm building my business on LinkedIn. At the time, with my sneaker reselling business, Instagram was where I was at. And I grew an account on there to almost 10,000 followers in not even 4 months, 5 months, literally. And with that, I'm shipping all around the world. I'm dealing with people, negotiating, having client interactions, having to provide good service, having to deal with disgruntled clients, and being able to navigate that to make sure that they don't become someone who's never a client again. So lessons like those that I just mentioned, they've translated to this career as a financial advisor, as you know, just as well as me.
so from college football to sneakers to advising. So when you got into the business, what was your business development plan initially? How were you planning on getting clients? I think that's one of the areas where everybody thinks it's like, if I'm just really smart and I know everything in the textbook and I know what's in the tax code, that's enough. People are just going to fall on my lap. So what was your client acquisition or business development plan initially?
I did the same thing I think everybody does, but I quickly saw that it was not sustainable, nor was it going to build anything worth having. So you get in the business, the first thing you think of is, oh, well, I'm going to reach out to people I already know, people from college, people from my hometown, people from anything that I know them from. Let me just reach out and see if I could get a conversation. And at first I did that. And fortunately, I had a really good network from college football, from sneaker reselling. I have clients that came from that world, believe it or not.
Awesome.
other things, just my parents' network, my grandparents' network, being able to say, hey, my dad said that you were someone I should reach out to. I don't know that you need my help, and I don't know you're even looking for what I do, but I'd love to have a 30-minute conversation with you and just talk about what you have going on right now if you're open to it. A ton of that, and I had a lot of success. But by the time I was about 9 months into my business, I'm like, okay, I talked to all the people. I did all the things I could and exhausted my network, so to speak. I didn't really, but you're perceived that you did.
Yeah.
So now I start looking at LinkedIn though, because with Instagram, that was where I was going with sneakers. This is only about a year after I was done reselling sneakers, and I thought, I'm not going to build my financial planning business on Instagram necessarily, but LinkedIn seems like a platform that it could work really well. So I started posting there, had no idea what I was doing, bought an automation software that like sends out messages and just pitches people basically. That was a waste of money. I probably wasted like $3,000 on that and did a couple other things, but that's essentially how I started and then what led to LinkedIn. And we could dive deeper on that journey moving forward. I'm sure you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. So you run out of runway of like, hey, here are the 100 names of people that you know that you should talk to, and you're now sitting here thinking, where can I go? So you find LinkedIn. What was your initial thought process with LinkedIn? Did you have a target market, or who were you going after? Were you thinking that, oh, there's young professionals there? What was your thought process of actually choosing LinkedIn? And we'll kind of dive into like your journey there.
I don't even know what my initial thought process was. Like, I don't think I had one. I think I just figured it's better to prospect through LinkedIn. That's a business platform as opposed to prospecting through Instagram, which is like, I'm going there to see what happened in the Chiefs and Jets game last night. So that's not, I don't think there was really a method to the madness beyond that. And when I got there at first, I was like, okay, I have some business owners that are clients. Let me just say I help business owners, and just very broad. So no success really with getting clients initially. I'd probably say my first year there, I might have gotten like 2 clients, if that, maybe. And when I got there, then what I liked and did see, I could filter my search. I could just target a certain group of people. So I had targets and I was just ripping out these messages automated, and to no avail. I mean, I would get meetings, but they weren't sticky. They weren't the people I wanted to sit with. They weren't necessarily the right demographic that needed my help. So that's what it got to. And then I did pay a marketing agency to do like email marketing integrated with some LinkedIn stuff, but they weren't very good. And I probably wasted $4,000. They actually got a complaint filed against me for something they did, which don't need to get into that. It wasn't anything serious, the complaint, but it was something stupid and totally avoidable that they did. And I was represented as it. So made some mistakes in the beginning. And at that point, now you fast forward, this is like early 2022. So almost 2 years ago, I was like 6-7 grand in the hole of trying to get into LinkedIn and do it. And I really gave up at that point. And later that year, about July, this is when I come across this guy, Justin Welsh. And Justin Welsh is putting out content about how to make money online, how to monetize your LinkedIn. I took his course. And after taking his course, I bought a coaching call with him. And after that, I sort of uncovered some of that secret sauce, if you will, of, here's how I could get clients.
I love that. So shout out to Justin Welsh. I'm sure we'll tag you in this. Justin Welsh is the man. If you guys don't know him who are listening, you need to go follow him. He lays out a very good blueprint on how to post content to solve your clients' problems. So you're going along on LinkedIn, you're trying things, you're getting no traction. You get to this point of a crossroad where you're like getting sick and tired of being sick and tired. You find somebody who has a framework. You go through the course. You go through Justin Welsh courses, which I'll vouch for it. I bought the course. It's very inexpensive. Anybody listening, you can get it for like $100 or $150. It's totally worth it. Where were you at that particular juncture? How many followers didn't you have, and like what was the game plan that you are now reformulating? Because now you're reinvigorated. You're like, okay, I have a path forward, and so now you have confidence. So what was the game plan, and how were you going to execute?
So by the time I finished all of that and then had a coaching call with him, this was August of 2022. So we're in October right now. So we're talking 14 months ago. And at that point, I had 3,500 followers. I actually have a screenshot of my account, fortunately. Like, I'm so glad I took that and saved it, because now you fast forward, I'm nearly 5x that in a little over a year. But at that point, what Justin had told me that really changed everything, he's like, your content isn't necessarily bad. You're not far off there. But what I was doing, I was all over the place. Like, here's a motivational post. Here's something about finances. Here's something just about me. And just like all of these one-off posts that, sure, they're great and they do well engagement wise, but they're not doing anything to further my business or my brand. And he told me, like, focus in one direction. So if you're going to speak about finance, great. You can still post motivational stuff. You can still post personal stuff, but how does that integrate into the brand that you're creating and what you want people to perceive you as? So that first time I spoke with him, that's what changed everything totally. And moving forward from August in 2022, the rest of that year, I think I got about 8 clients from LinkedIn in 2022. So nothing crazy, but I started to see some evidence that what I was doing was succeeding, when I'm getting more clients from that in a couple months than I did in over a year trying to do it my way.
Awesome. So you started fine tuning your content. What was your game plan? Because a lot of advisors who are going to be listening to it, like, we're very regimented system people. So what sort of strategy did you have for how you scheduled out your week to focus on content? How do you organize your content, and how do you execute on your ideas?
The most important piece of that, and I'm going to get to scheduling in a second, but the most important piece of content was to realize that I'm not speaking to other financial advisors. I'm not speaking to Eric. I'm not speaking to Joe, financial advisor. I'm speaking to the people I want to become clients. So why is that important? Because when you're creating content, I think as an advisor, we could get hung up a lot of times in sounding smart and worrying about what our colleagues are going to think of how we look or what we're talking about. But in reality, you want your content to be simple. You want to talk about simple posts. I had a post recently that I put out, and it was literally as simple as, stocks don't work for everybody. Some people are better off with other investments. It got a ton of engagement. It got a ton of people in my target market to view it and comment on it and like it and have interactions with me. But if you're another financial advisor looking at that, you're like, well, yeah, duh, of course. And in those cases, these things that are so simple to us can be so complex to the average person, or not necessarily the average person, but the person that we want to become a client. So that was a big mindset shift I had to take. But in terms of how I'm doing it, I take 2 hours a week. Sunday is my day. I like Sunday mornings or even afternoons sometimes. And I'll go in and I'll make my content, and I try to get 10 days out from whenever I'm creating. In the beginning, it wasn't necessarily like that. It was just getting a couple posts so I could have stuff for the week ahead. And maybe that was 1 post, maybe it was 3, but ideally I was getting all the way out for the next week. Where am I getting those ideas though? Because I think this is a struggle of a lot of advisors. Okay, cool. I could schedule time. I could time block. I know how to do that. But what do I even write about? What I decided was, let me look at my client meetings. What can I break down of what concepts were spoke about with my clients and with my prospects, or questions that they asked me? And how could I turn that into a piece of content that can benefit my entire network? So that's one way. Another thing what's going on in your own financial life. I think that it's really cool to be transparent as an advisor about how you're navigating financial issues in your own life, or financial, I don't even want to say issues or problems, but just things that come up. So for example, a few months ago, I had to put a roof on my house and I wasn't expecting it. So I had a post about that. I probably had a couple posts about it, just speaking on, this is why you have an emergency fund. This is how I navigated this. This is what I did when I had to go about this. And I'm constantly thinking about ways I could incorporate my own life into content to benefit my followers and connections, because then they see that I'm walking the walk as well. So around content creation, that's a mindset shift I had, the process I go about, and really where I'm getting ideas from.
And when you get ideas, where are you organizing these ideas? Because sometimes they come at you at random points. Where do you organize these amazing epiphanies that you have?
So I'm a simple guy. I love Apple Notes, like the iPhone Notes app. I have a running note that just is labeled content ideas. And every time I get one, I'll go in there and just real quick type it up, throw it in the notes. And then when I have my session on Sunday, I'll come back to my notes and dissect what I have in there and elaborate on it. So I'll just make sure I get enough info in there that I'm not going to forget what the concept was that I was thinking of.
Got it. So everybody listening, if you got an iPhone, you have a content documenting machine at your thing. Use an Apple Note. You just literally can bullet point out ideas. Talk about X, talk about Y. So you highlighted a lot. So one was keeping it simple, right? Keeping this note. You talked also about something I thought that was super important, specifically this. Some of the concepts that we as advisors think are so simple because we've been in this world. We think, oh, nobody needs to know that. And so you going out and sharing this information, I think that's a huge value add. You talked about how sometimes our perception of our other colleagues who are in our network, we think to ourselves, they're going to think this is too basic, or they're going to judge us. But we have, we're not writing to them. So I thought those were a couple of really, really, really good nuggets. So you organize your notes inside of an Apple Note. What sort of tools, you talk about this process you go through on Sunday, what sort of tools do you use to schedule out, 10 days in advance and your posts, etc.?
There's a ton of different websites or apps you could use out there. But truthfully, if you're starting from scratch, you could just use LinkedIn. I mean, you could schedule right on LinkedIn, which I think is a great feature they have, and that costs $0. So that's a tool right there that no one could give an excuse, even if you're a brand new advisor starting new, to use that and schedule content out. But there's a bunch. There's Taplio, there's Buffer, there's, I think, Hype Fury is another one. I don't think which one you use necessarily matters so much. I think it's just helpful to have everything in one place. So maybe that is right in the LinkedIn app itself.
Awesome, man. So using a scheduling tool can be helpful, or you can just use the stuff that's for free. If you're just starting out and you're trying to do this on a budget, use the LinkedIn. It's free, guys. It's super, super easy to do to schedule out these posts. Okay, so how, for you, this is the thing that I think about, and I think advisors struggle with this, with marketing overall, and now we're talking about social media, but how do you measure success, right, from your standpoint? Is it, what is it that you consider to be successful? What sort of metrics are you tracking? Because being low IQ, most advisors are like, I did this thing. Did I get a client or didn't I get a client? So like, what other metrics or milestones are you looking at to measure success here with LinkedIn and what you're doing?
I'm going to go really deep here, but just stick with me, because where I'm going to start is needed for where we're going to go to.
Beautiful.
So with content, the easiest way to measure success is impressions, likes, comments. Easiest way. If you get a lot of likes, if you get a lot of comments, if you get a lot of impressions, great. Doesn't tell the whole story though. And there's certain posts where that's going to be awesome. There's other posts where you're going to have to measure by different things. So 3 steps back, maybe even 5 steps. I did that call with Justin Welsh in August of 2022. I thought naturally in August of 2023, it made sense to have another call with Justin. So I paid him again for more of his time and reevaluated what I was doing. And at this time, quick side note, I think like just acknowledge I don't know what I don't know. I think people overlook that. I was having success getting clients doing good, but I'm going back to Justin. So now when I go back to Justin to get back into things, what he basically went over with me is he doesn't think that I understood how people actually buy things. And when I say things, products, services, whatever you insert there. And he said, think about the journey people go on. So we basically go from totally being unaware we even have an issue to then knowing there's an issue, but not knowing how to fix it. Then we know that we know how to fix it, but we're not aware that Mondo's solution exists to fix it. And then we know Mondo exists, but we don't know that he's right for us. So if we go from all the way up here where we don't know we have an issue all the way down, the stuff at the top and the content that addresses just exposing a problem, that is the stuff that's going to get the most reach. That's going to get the most comments. It's going to get the most likes. The most people are going to see that because the most people can relate to it because you're just talking about something that's exposing a problem. You don't necessarily need people to know who you are and why they should work with you. They don't need to know how the solutions that they implement work and the ways to implement them. And they don't even need to know the solutions exist. They just need to know, oh, this might be a problem. So it's easiest to get the most people there. So if I have content that's more towards that side of things, I'm measuring that by impressions. I'm measuring that by likes. I'm measuring that by comments. If I have content that's going into depth of here's how I helped my client and the way we did it, the way we went about it, and why they liked this, that's more towards the bottom of that scale. So if I'm posting content like that, that has to be measured by, did I get a new intro with a prospect from this meeting? Sometimes that answer is going to be no. And even if I didn't, that's okay. And this is where it gets tough to really measure things. And you sort of have to, I think of like that picture of the guy he's mining underground and he's like an inch away from gold. And the other guy was an inch away and he walked away. I think of like, you just got to be that miner and just think like, I'm right there, because you might not get a prospect, but a post like that might move someone from being a 3 of being ready to talk to you to being a 7. And now one more time you post in a week or two, they might reach out then. And I could tell you, I've had people that became clients that have interacted with my stuff for over a year. And it took that long. And it's the same as in our lives every day. You meet that person 3 years ago, and all of a sudden 3 years later, they say, hey, I want to talk to you about that. So measuring success becomes difficult in that aspect, but those are the things that I do think about.
I mean, tell you what, you dropped some nuggets there. A couple of them specifically is you talked about something which I call the trust bridge. The trust bridge is like everybody's bridge is a different length, right? Depending on whether you're trusting or not trusting. And as advisors, you use the analogy of the pickaxe. You've got to cross over to the trust bridge. And once you get on the other side, that's where your clients buy. Now, you don't know if that trust bridge is 1 interaction, 2 interactions, 3 interactions. Here's the reality of it is, since we're talking about LinkedIn and social media, you don't know when that person's going to be on. You don't know if that person's going to see every one of your posts. So it's your engagement with that person might be sporadic. And each time you're doing it, you're building trust, you're building credibility, which inspires confidence. So people want to take action. They're like, oh, that is the guy. The other thing is I always think about folks putting things off. I don't know if you've ever put anything off in your life. Maybe it was like, oh, I got to clean up the garage. I got to do X. Everybody puts things off. And I find that finances tend to be one of those things. And so I'm curious, you talked about Sundays, you batch your content, you talk about the Apple Notes, you talked about having this strategy call with Justin around the 4 reasons that people buy. I'm curious, do you repurpose content? Do you go back in and look at previous posts that do well and kind of follow? And then how do you organize it? Do you have a series that you go through? You're like, oh, I'm going to talk about these things, or you just randomly hitting posts? Is there a system in how you're posting?
Really interesting, good and timely question, because yes is the short answer. Since that call I had with Justin this year in August, I have started to do these things. And that's actually where he coached me up on, if you could organize this stuff and do that, there's massive opportunity. So in my scheduling tool, I look at that as organization in terms of like what my content is, what I'm going to talk about, and why. So I'll focus on, like this week, I could give you an example. I'm posting on investing principles, and mainly the topic is how to decide what investments are right for you, but focusing on, it doesn't need to be what society invests in or what your friends invest in or your neighbors. It just needs to be what works for you and what you understand. And I have a series of posts that are going through that are going through those 4 stages that I just mentioned, and getting people further down that, to then hopefully someone is booking a meeting with me by the end of this week as a result of that. So that's first at organization. Now, the other piece of idea organization, because that's content, but idea organization, I do have a spreadsheet that I keep where I just think about these 4 stages, and with the ideas, I'll jot out like four things. And this is just a Google sheet where, let's say it was this topic that I just mentioned, I could have 4 different pieces on, here's how I expose the problem, here's how I expose the solution, here's how I deliver what the solutions are, and here's how I deliver why I'm the right one to deliver those solutions for each idea. So I have like, I don't know, there might be 40 ideas on that spreadsheet right now, and that's only going to grow as time goes on. Coming back to repurposing, though, repurposing is essential, especially for content, because now think about this, Eric. In August of last year, I had 3,500 people following me, and most of them were not active, I would say. Most of them were people that I was just pitching from those automation tools that I mentioned before. So 3,500, 1,000 of those might have been real connections. Now I have over 15. So that's 12,000 people, just call it, that haven't seen a lot of my stuff from before. So I could go back, take those concepts from some of those posts, rewrite something that's more in my style and of the person I am today, because I obviously grew as a person since then as well, and put that out and get another good piece of content. I actually just did this very recently about a personal story of myself, and the post did like double what it did originally.
I love it, man. I'm curious because I mean, I'm sure people want to know, what did you consider yourself a writer before you started this journey?
No. I was horrible. And like, I was good in school growing up, as I mentioned, but I was horrible in English class. Like I would get, not horrible, but I was like B's and C's pretty consistently in English. And I just struggled with it and hated writing, hated doing papers. But as I started writing for impact instead of length, I realized how much I liked it.
Good. I was just curious. You know, we see all these folks who are like doing really well with content. And I always think to myself, was that person naturally a good writer, or did they just hone their crafts? Okay, so you do repurpose content. You're not a writer, but you learned along the way. Let's talk about results. Like what sort of results have you gotten? Let's just call it year to date from LinkedIn and some of the work that you've done. Like what sort of intro meetings, what sort of clients, have you materialized this year?
As of speaking right now, I've gotten roughly 110, 115 intro meetings booked on my calendar from LinkedIn, and we're in October, so there's still 2 more months. Of those 110 or 115, there's still about a good 10, 15 people that I haven't met yet. So they're on my calendar, but we just haven't sat down yet. And out of that total number that's left, about 30 of them have become clients. And our average client fee is roughly $3,000 per year. our
Love it,
retainer.
man. I love it. So what I heard, I just ran the math. I pulled my fancy calculator out and I was like, that's about 12 intro meetings a month if I average it out, assuming that we just go through September. That's pretty impressive that you're getting that many reps. Let's talk about, what do those meetings look like? How do you get these meetings scheduled? What sort of tools do you use for that? What sort of preliminary questions, et cetera? So because I'm diving in deep here because some of the folks listening to it, they need that level of granularity. They don't know what they don't know. So how do you execute on this?
I use Calendly, which is extremely affordable. It's like $150 for the year, something like that. And I'll just have conversations with people, and when they exhibit interest or they reach out, I'll just say, hey, here's my Calendly. You can book here. And I have a few questions on there intentionally. One being, have you ever worked with an advisor? Yes or no? I'll also ask, what's your biggest financial struggle? And then why did you take time out of your day to actually schedule this call? So that's first. So now it gives me some intel coming into the meeting, and I want them to realize that this is the type of stuff we're going to be talking about. So when I get to that meeting, my process for every intro meeting is the same. It's rigid, but it's flexible. And I have to give a shout out to Brendan Fraser. I took his course, The Ultimate Intro Meeting. I can't recommend that enough to any financial advisor, no matter what model you run your practice on, flat fee only, fee-based, commission-based, whatever it is. That course totally transformed how I run my intro meetings. And essentially what I took from it is focusing on what's important to this person, asking questions like, why did you schedule this? Like I just said before, I asked it before, but I want to ask it in the meeting. I want to know, what are you working towards? What's your vision? If I wave a magic wand, what does life ideally look like? What are you doing to get there? Why hasn't it worked? Very simple things that I think we always think about, a lot of advisors ask, but just making sure I'm covering all these bases. And then I want to know what their confidence is in that. So once I know what their confidence is, this gives me intel into, okay, so your confidence is a 6. What do we need to get to a 10? And then they're gonna tell me that so I could come back to it. I want to ask about their experience with advisors in the past. I get to that. And after I go through that with them, I'm going to recap everything, spit it back, make sure I didn't miss anything, and hear from them how that was, if it paints the picture. This is the most important point of any intro meeting, because if I can do that, I exhibit to them that I get them, I understand them, and I'm listening to them to help them solve their problems. Afterwards, it's really just going through process and what we charge and what we would quote them at and stuff like that. But the beginning, I think, is a little bit different than what I did in the past. And I imagine it's different from a lot of people, but I did get a lot of it from Brendan Fraser's course, The Ultimate Intro Meeting, which again, can't recommend it enough.
Shout out to Brendan Fraser. We'll make sure that we link you here. It's interesting, what you were sharing in that intro meeting. For those of you that are listening, Mondo talked about what I call it the setup and the hammer. So basically, you're allowing the person to feel the disconnect and actually think through their actual problem. And then you're turning around and you're framing it in a way so that you could be the hammer to their nail. There's one question that I would add in there, and this is called the Dan Sullivan question, which anybody who doesn't know Dan Sullivan, you're missing out. He's wrote probably one of the best advisors book that I've ever read, called The Advisor Century. Should be required reading for anybody who's an advisor. But there's a question that goes like this, and I use this at the end of all of our intro meetings too, so you could steal this, Mondo, and anybody else that's listening. It works like gold. If we were sitting down together a year from now, looking back on all the work that we've done together, what would have to happen for you to feel really great about the work that we've done together? And the client will tell you, I would want to do this, I would want to do that, I want to do X, I want to do Y, I want to do Z, I want to get this all done, I want to get organized here, I want to get out of debt, blah, blah, blah. Then you just say, great, those are all phenomenal goals. That's exactly what we're going to do for you. We're going to do da, 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 da. You recap it to them, and this is how our fee works. Client walks there, then now they literally gave you the keys to solving their problems, because that's really what they came to you for in the first place. Like, hey, help me shortcut where I am to where I want to go. Okay. So Calendly, intro process. Your intro process, is it some sort of a sheet that you have? Is it just some sort of a Word document? What is it? Because people will ask about that.
I don't.
Is it in your head, or you just know it now, or what?
It's in my head now, man. Like I've done enough of them. I mean, just this year I've done 100 of them, right? And you take enough reps, it just becomes muscle memory.
If anybody wants an intro guide, when just put comments here. I have an intro guide similar to what Mondo's talking about. I built one for myself when I was doing a lot of meetings, and it was just a simple Word document with a bunch of questions that I outlined. And I'm like, I want to ask these to every single client. And I'm going to tell you what, it was gold. Now, because I've done it so much, I'm like you. I know what to ask based on what somebody's telling me. And I'm like, oh, okay, I need to ask this. I need to ask that. I need to ask that. So if anybody wants that, you can comment here. We'll make sure you get a copy. All right. So we talked about that. Let's talk about direct messaging, right? As everybody knows, it goes down in the DM. So how do you leverage direct messaging as part of your LinkedIn strategy? And then I also want to come back to your thought process about how you should view your LinkedIn page. So let's talk about the direct messaging, and let's talk about your page.
So with direct messaging, I think it stems from one thing before it. So with LinkedIn and with marketing through the platform, there's 3 levels that you want to think of. We have content, a level deeper is comments, and a level deeper is direct messaging. All of them sorted by how personal they are. So in your content, you could get very personal. You can get very personal in your content, but someone reading it, it's not a personal interaction necessarily. They're just seeing the post in the feed. Now you get into the comment section and you're commenting on other people's posts. They're replying to you. You're replying to comments on your posts. That's a little bit more personal, because if you comment on a post, you're expecting that person's going to comment back, and now you have an interaction, but it's a public interaction. So you're not going to talk necessarily about too personal stuff. Same thing on your post. They comment, they're expecting a comment back. Same dynamic. Now with messaging, if you're having conversations in direct message, people are comfortable going a level deeper and getting into some personal stuff through conversation, because they know it's only you two. It's not your whole network's viewing the conversation. So who am I messaging? Why am I messaging them? Another step back to commenting. One of the main pieces in my strategy that I use, and you talk about omnipresence before, Eric, is commenting on people who are in my niche market, and also people in our industry that are thought leaders or are active posting content, so that I could be visible across the board to different people. So people in my niche market, that's obvious. I want my potential clients to see me. I want them to know who I am. Other advisors, I think it's good to see what other advisors are doing to reevaluate your own strategy. But also, the easiest place to get a client is where the client already is. If someone's following an advisor that's in your niche, they're probably already looking for financial advice. That's not to say I'm looking to steal clients from people. That's not the case at all. The reality just is, if I'm commenting on Eric's post and Eric's commenting on my posts, there's people that are never going to be a fit for me that it might be for him, and vice versa. So that's where I see that as almost an abundance mindset type of thing, where we could all win and it's beneficial. But as you're commenting all over the place, so we talked about that, you're going to get people that are like, who is this guy? Like, I got to see his profile. Who the heck is this guy? I see him 40 times in my feed. What's his deal? So now when they come to your profile, and you alluded to this, I'm going to get to it now. Your profile should make it insanely obvious. This is what I do. This is who I help. This is how I do it. And someone should be able to process that within 3 seconds. And if they can't, they're never going to come to you to do business with you. It's just the reality, because we're impatient. We don't have long attention spans. So if I view a profile and I don't know what this person does, I'm probably just going to leave it after wondering who they were. Now, back to messaging. So we're commenting all over the place. We're getting people to look at our profile. They view our profile. They see what we do. A lot of people will still not act. A lot of people will still not book meetings with you. A lot of people will never book meetings with you. But what I am obsessed with is seeing who views my profile, not only to get clients, but just to build relationships, maybe even with other professionals in my network, because you don't know what's going to come out of it. I mean, I've got podcast opportunities. I've got keynote speeches from it. I've got so many different things just from having conversations with people who viewed my profile. So the approach I take, and this is the easiest way. There's other ways that I'll get messaging, but this is number one that everybody could execute on if you have LinkedIn Premium, so you can see who views your profile. Hey, saw you viewed my profile. Did you have questions about anything? Hey, saw you viewed my profile. Was there anything that I could help you with? Just all stuff like that as you're going through LinkedIn. And my Siri just popped up here. I got to exit out.
No worries. So,
of course,
so
sorry about that.
No, you're good. So when you're messaging these people who viewed your profile, are you connecting with them? Are you sending them a connection request? So let's say somebody views your profile and they're a second degree connection or a third degree. Do you just instantly hit connect and then message them? What's your protocol there? Because I know some people are weird about this. I mean, I'm usually like, I connect with anybody.
So I don't necessarily send it to anyone, but I genuinely look at their profile if they're not connected with me. And I'm just like, okay, what's this person about? Are they someone I'd like in my network? And if they are, the message usually becomes, I view my profile, just took a look at yours. I thought this was interesting. Would love to be connected. Something like that, in that ballpark. Another thing I like to do is messaging people I'm already connected with. And if they post content, I could say, saw you viewed my profile, just saw your post about X. This was cool. Like, what happened here? And have a follow-up question relating to that. So I'm having all these conversations, though, not to sell anyone or make them a client, even though I know it probably will come in the meantime. But back to omnipresence. With omnipresence, if I'm having all these conversations at volume, and now these people know what I do because I've had conversations, and they might know something personal about me, like that my sister's having a baby in December and I'm going to be an uncle. And they would have never known that because I haven't posted content about it. But in a DM, I'm probably going to talk about that with people. And now everyone who listens to this podcast knows it as well. But anyways, stuff like that.
Shout out to your sister for having a baby.
Right. So, but just as a perfect example, stuff like that I'm going to tell people, they're going to do the same to you. And also, if they see your profile and they know what you do, they're going to unload financial stress onto you if it's something that they're really thinking about. And it might be totally irrelevant to your conversation, but they just see this is your title, so I'm going to talk to you about this now. And that naturally segues into an intro meeting as I tee it up when I get a question or a concern like that.
Awesome. So when I'm thinking about what you're saying, this of actually taking a second to review people's profile, this, just being honest, this sounds time intensive. How many hours? So we talked about 2 hours of content creation. How many hours are you spending during the week or during a given day doing the commenting and the DMing on LinkedIn? How many hours would you say? And if you have an iPhone, you're like mine, it usually tracks with how much you're on each social media.
So I time block this, because if I didn't, I would never have time for stuff. So I'll time block an hour and a half in the morning. It's always an hour, but an hour and a half at most in the morning that I'm commenting and going through and engaging with people. Before, I would then time block another hour and a half later in the day for messaging. Now, with messaging, it's important to know I would only send out messages once a week. Like I would do it once a week because I want to build up like, okay, a bunch of people have viewed my profile. I could do this and get these messages out at once. And now I'm in conversation mode. So I could respond to these all at once and do it at the same time. So every week you figure hour and a half a day, that's 7, call it 10 hours just for like being active on the platform. Then you want to add in another hour and a half. So let's just call it 12. That is for messaging on top of that. Maybe there's another hour that you end up just responding sporadically to messages throughout the week. So that's 13. And I think another 2 hours for content creation, probably about 15 hours per week. If I was going to estimate my time that I'm spending for LinkedIn or on LinkedIn, but sounds like a ton of time. You don't need to spend that much time to leverage it effectively. You just won't grow as fast and you won't see the results as fast. So I know like there's Alex Hormozy, and I know you're a fan as well. Like his business content's awesome. One thing that he said that has stuck with me about social media and content and his thought process of like how often he posts and what he does. He says, if there's someone that's posting one time a day and they need X amount of posts to get results, well, if I posted 7 times a day across different channels compared to that one time, I'm going to get results 7 times faster than that person just because that's the way these things work. So if I want to spend 7 times the amount of time and effort on a platform, I'm going to get much more results than the guy that's spending 7 times less time on that platform. So it's one of those things that sucks. But now, as I have an assistant and other things, you learn to outsource pieces of it and you learn to get more efficient with it. So I don't think I necessarily spend all of that 15 hours now on the platform, but I think the bare minimum, you got to be giving it like 10 hours a week to make it work, to make it actually worth doing.
I love it. I love it. So you hit us with a lot of nuggets there. There was the 3 things you said in order. There's your content, there's the comments, and then there's direct messaging on order of personalization. I thought that was super insightful. There was the 3 things, the three W's, as I call. What is my content? What am I going to talk about? And why am I talking about it? I think these are all frameworks that advisors want to know about. But now sitting here 14 months later from this pivotal turning point of talking to Justin and kind of going all in on LinkedIn, what would you do differently if you were going to do it all over again? Like if you had to start today, there's some advisor right now that's listening to this. What would you do differently? Where would you start? Like, what would you do today if you were starting at zero?
What's crazy is I don't think I would do anything differently. And I'm very grateful that going back to that mindset, I don't know what I don't know. From day one, I was paying for consulting. I was paying for coaching because I'm just like, dude, I don't know anything. I'm not getting business. So I clearly got to lean on other people who know how to do it. So if I could give you one piece of advice, don't be afraid to pay for access. Don't be afraid to pay for information because that stuff's going to save you a lot of time. I'm 14 months here today, gotten 30 some clients from the platform in that time span. Meanwhile, 2 years prior in my business, I got 0. It's easy to say like, oh, this is great. But if you told me this 14 months ago, I couldn't have ever thought of that. And it's simply because I leaned on other people and I realized that I don't know everything. So let me listen to the people that do know a thing or two.
I think that's a powerful nugget there. I think as advisors, and I see this a lot with medical professionals, that because we can tend to be smart and resourceful and strategic, we think we can figure everything out ourselves, right? And you hit on something that's paramount. By hiring experts, you can shortcut the amount of time it takes to actually get results. You can avoid pitfalls and you can learn something new. You stay curious, right? And that can create opportunities. I think that was some beautiful, beautiful, beautiful framing that you had. Well, I want to pause here because we're getting close to the end. And I just want to, do you have any closing thoughts, Mondo, for the folks that are listening on here, and then I'll get us wrapped up.
I would just add to that last point. I want to make sure I get this in. If I had not paid for experts or advice or consulting to get better at this stuff, I was thinking while you were talking, well, it might have taken me 4 years to get this much business from LinkedIn. But I don't even think that's accurate in saying it, because I think I wouldn't have seen enough evidence or enough results that I would have quit and stopped doing it altogether. So let that be the lesson off of that point for everybody. And if you're an advisor that you're looking for a new marketing channel, and this is something that you think could be beneficial for you, you're on the fence, don't be afraid to pay for advice. Don't be afraid to do that, because it could be the missing link that you need for that.
I love that. I love that. I just want to thank everybody for listening to this D.A.M live podcast with Mondo Salavanti. I would tell you, go follow Mondo on LinkedIn. Look up Justin Welsh, Brendan Fraser, Dan Sullivan over at Strategic Coach. Those were some of the folks that we referenced. And study other people who are doing it successfully, right? Because you can imitate, you can learn, you can see their strategy just by watching folks. And the beautiful thing about Mondo and some of these other folks is you can see exactly how they're executing, and you can learn from that. So I want to thank everybody for joining us, and I hope that you be great, be amazing, be curious, most importantly, be disciplined and have courage and believe in yourself. Take care, everybody.